this is the feed corn, and as you can see, I have lots and lots of it here. So this will do me for a whole season of carp fishing. This is what the carp corn looks like. It's at the store, it's called feed corn, and it's for cows and horses. So this is how I store my carp corn. I store it in a little plastic, or in a big plastic storage bin. These are usually used for storing stuff in houses, but I use it for the corn. A big bag of feed corn is available from places which sell food for cows and horses, and it's called feed corn, and maybe a 70-pound bag is maybe $14, so it's very, very inexpensive. So what I do now is I take this corn and I fill it with water. This corn pot, and I fill it with water, and keep in mind the corn is going to expand quite a bit, so I'm going to put in quite a bit more water than there is corn. And at the end I want there to be just a little bit more water than there is corn. There we go. Now we're ready to put it on the stove and cook it for 3 hours on low. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the corn and I'm going to put it on the stove and let it cook. There it is. It's going to cook for a while, for about 3 hours, until the skin splits. There's the corn. It is still hard and it hasn't cooked for long enough, so we have to leave it in there for a longer time until it softens up and the skin splits. There's the corn. It's starting to cook, and it's not anywhere near cooked yet at this point. It's still really hard, so we have to wait for the corn to soften up and for the skin to split before we add sugar and let it age. It looks gross, but it works on carp. What I'm doing is slowly boiling the feed corn on low heat. It takes about 3 hours for the kernels to get soft and for the skins to split. This is what the corn looks like when it's split. The skins are starting to split open, and the corn is very soft to the touch. This is how the corn looks when it's done. The skins of the corn kernels are starting to split, and the corn is soft to the touch. The point of this is so that the sugar gets absorbed into this split open corn, and then it acts like a little scent sponge, and the carp will smell it and love it and eat it. What I'm doing now is I'm going to add in lots of sugar, like a lot, and lots and lots in there. And the idea is so that the sugar will be dissolved in the hot corn water, like that. So the water in which the corn is, there's just a little bit of water, a little bit more water than there is corn, and it's very, very sweet, almost like a syrup, but not quite. Really, really sweet. So if you stick your finger in and it tastes really sweet, then you know it's good. See, that isn't enough. I need lots. And the reason is that carp have a sweet tooth, kind of like people, and they really, really like sweet stuff. And this is a very, very simple recipe, but it works really well. You can also add in other additives, like from the grocery store. They have these little flavoring containers in the baking food section, and generally spicy is better when it's cold, and fruity is better when it's warmer in the water. And you can also put in food coloring, and that will change the color of the corn. So if some of your corn, say, has a mint flavor and the other has a grape flavor, then you can quickly tell them apart, because one is red and one is purple. But what I found works the best is actually just the sweet corn. It doesn't even really need much of a scent. So now I'm tasting the corn syrup, and it's very sweet, which is good. I'm just going to add a little bit more, like that. That's probably good. And what you're doing is you're just adding in sugar to taste, more or less, just to get a nice sweet taste. And then just stir it in like that, and because the water is hot, the water will dissolve the sugar, and then the corn will absorb the sugar, and so you're making little corn candies for the carp, and they love them. But don't put in too much, or what'll happen is the next day, or in 1 or 2 days, these shells will get very, very hard, and then the bait isn't quite as good. So it's a fine line between too much and not enough sugar. You've got to experiment for yourself what works best in your location. So now my corn is sweetened, and it's been boiled until the skin has cracked open and the soft insides are visible, like a little scent sponge. Now and the sugar has been added. Now I'm going to turn off the heat like this, and it's off. And now I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to put it into a bucket with a lid on it, and it's going to sit for 24 hours. This allows the sugar to be absorbed into the corn. So what I do now is I take the corn and sugar and water mixture and I put it into a bucket. A little bucket, preferably with a sealed lid. And then I let it sit for 24 hours. So what I'm doing now is I'm just pouring this hot mixture in here. And it's pretty hot. You can let it cool down too first. I haven't bothered in this case. Just stick the corn in there and then just let it sit for 24 hours. There's the corn. It's just going to sit for 24 hours. And then I can use it for carp fishing. There's the carp corn. I'm going to let it sit for 24 hours, and then it'll be ready for carp fishing. The flavors, or the sugary water, will be absorbed by the corn, and the corn is split, so it's like a little scent sponge. And then the carp are going to love this, and they're going to eat it, and you're going to catch lots of big fish, I hope. After a while, what will happen with this corn, if you let it, say, stand for 2 or 3 days, is it starts to get a little bit rancid. Once it's a little bit rotten, it's still okay, and sometimes the carp like this more. But there's a point where it's too rotten, and it gets really, really slimy almost. Like it's no longer watery, somehow it gets slimy. I think it's a starch. Something is happening with the starch and in the corn, and once it's at this point, it's no longer good, and then you have to make another batch. But sometimes the carp even like it when it's a little bit rotten. Sometimes a little bit rotten is actually the best. So maybe 2 or 3 days old is the best. This is what the corn looks like after 24 hours. As you can see, the corn has sort of popped open a little bit like popcorn, and the soft inside is exposed, which is now softened by the sugar solution, and it acts like a little scent sponge. And when this is dropped in the water, it gives off a scent, and the carp will be attracted to the scent. This is what the carp corn looks like after 24 hours. You can see the water sugar solution is a little bit cloudy, but not too cloudy, and the corn has absorbed the sugar solution. This makes the corn very appetizing to the carp, both in terms of taste and in terms of scent. So it emits a scent in the water, and the carp love it. The idea is to take this corn and throw it into the water, and then rig it up with a hair rig, which is a little hard to do, but it'll work. The corn is still hard enough to work on a hair rig, and then the carp all are attracted to the corn that's thrown in the water, and you keep throwing in corn there to keep them around, and then they eat mostly corn kernels without a hook, and eventually they get one with a hook, because they'll eat 40 or 50 of these kernels sometimes. The idea is to take handfuls of this corn like this. This is the carp corn, which is ready for use, and it gets thrown into the water as far as you can throw it where you think the carp will be. And every maybe 15 minutes you throw another handful in, and what it does is it sets up something almost like a little carp McDonald's, and then or a carp buffet, and then the carp all come there to eat this corn, and they eat lots of these kernels, and then you throw your hair rig in there, and eventually they'll eat lots of kernels without a hook, and eventually they'll find a kernel with a hook, and then you'll hook them, and then that's how you get them. So this method allows you to produce lots of corn for very, very cheap, which is what you need, lots of it, and then this is how you catch the carp. And every once in a while, when the corn gets used up, then you just put some fresh corn on the hair rig, and then the scent stays good. So this corn will emit a scent path in the water, and the carp are mostly scent feeders, so they smell the corn, and then they'll swim towards it, and they'll start eating, and eventually they'll hit your lure too. They'll eat lots of kernels without hooks, and eventually they'll find your kernel with a hook, and then watch out, your rod will bend. Hope you catch a big fish. So by this point, the corn has become a little bit gooey. It's almost like sticky, or almost like a syrup, and it has a bit of a sour smell to it. You can see that by this point it's nearing the end of its lifespan, but sometimes it's also really good like this. You can see maybe it's time to make a new batch.